Good morning, 8:13 on a Tuesday morning. How you doing? It is November 19th already. Oh my goodness. We are screaming towards Thanksgiving, and I will tell you this, Thanksgiving's trending colder. And some snow in some places that weren't reflected on yesterday's GFS, and maybe less snow in places like where I live. Okay. But let's get into it. We'll head out to Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, the mistake by the lake. Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland rocks, actually. So here's what's going on today. Some rain moving in as the front approacheth. And then tomorrow, Wednesday, the stronger cold front comes in and low pressure develops over the Great Lakes. It's going to start getting windy and cooler, but still rain. And then Thursday is when they start to see that low really strengthening, very windy, rain and snow wrapping around in Cleveland, Ohio. Here are the hazards otherwise across the United States, watches and warnings, that sort of thing. Still heavy rain down there in Louisiana, a little bit of southern Mississippi, so some flooding concerns remain. West Virginia, what is that? Is that a winter storm watch? I think it looks like that kind of blue. We still have a little bit of a red flag warning up there in Massachusetts. For the northern plains, it's a lot of wind. We have high wind watches. We have wind advisories also, and that's moving now into parts of Nebraska and probably will expand. The arrowhead of Michigan included, and then further north in North Dakota, we've got some winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories happening there. Washington State blizzard warning for the Cascades, very heavy snow and lots of wind, and winter storm warnings up for much of the rest of the Cascades, say Oregon and the Olympic Mountains, and even further into eastern Washington into Idaho. Freeze warnings up and down the central valleys of California, and also along the central California coast. Point Conception also freeze warnings, and we have heavy snow expected in the Siskiyous and into the Sierra Nevada of California as well, hitting the highlights there. Let's take a look at the clouds across the country, our infrared picture here, and you can see here's our rotation, the low moving northward towards Canada in Minnesota, spreading lots of clouds, lots of rain, and a little bit of snow starting to mix in as we're getting into some of that colder air in North Dakota, and that's why they have those winter storm watches up. And then the Pacific Northwest, a very strong storm is approaching the coast, and this is going to increase winds. We have high wind warnings along the coast of Oregon and even Washington, and that blizzard warning up here in the Cascades of Washington. So this is going to be a big, powerful storm for the Northwest. And then you see our pockets of tropical moisture and very heavy rainfall into Louisiana and Mississippi, and even a little bit into Alabama here. So that's what's happening. Otherwise, clear skies here. And behind this low, we're going to pull in that cold air, and I'll show you some wind chills even that are coming up. But here's where it's cooler and warmer today. Much cooler today in Texas, especially East Texas into Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas and Missouri and Kansas. Also much cooler in the Rockies, Central Rockies, back towards Utah and Nevada, and a little bit cooler in California. That's why I have those freeze warnings up. It's cooler in Montana, cooler in the Northeast, but much warmer up into Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Great Lakes, and also the Southeast. Today's surface looks like this. There's our low in Minnesota with some rain mixed with snow, or rain really, Minnesota, Wisconsin, but it's snow in North Dakota, even some freezing rain possible there. Heavy snow possible. Heavy snow in the Oregon Cascades, the Siskiyous of California, the Washington Cascades, eastern Oregon, the Olympic Mountains. So that strong storm is going to make its presence felt for sure. Colder air moving into the plains. And then it's showers and thunderstorms for the southeast up into the Ohio Valley. And then rain for the eastern Great Lakes. Severe weather, yeah, possible. A little bit of Louisiana into Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle, and maybe even a slight risk of tornadoes in those same areas, but close to the coast. Temperature anomalies today: below average west, above average east, and the highs look like this. So those 60s poking all the way into Michigan, and 50s even all the way up here into the upper Midwest. for the central plains. But then you get to the west side of the Rockies, and it's cooler. Is that a 64 for Tucson? Looks like it. So, a little cooler on the west side. You have 40s along the Oregon coast and the Willamette Valley, 40s and 30s inland. And there's your 50s and 60s for Central California, which will be mid 40s tomorrow morning for Central California. And then you get just a little bit inland and with elevation. And we've got a lot of 20s and 30s here and some teens as well. Starting out the day in the mid 30s here in Iowa, which is above average, and 20s up there in North Dakota, South Dakota, which should be about right for this time of year. And then it's warm in the southeast still, with temperatures in the 50s and 60s to start the day tomorrow. Tomorrow's surface looks like this. Our low makes progress into the Great Lakes, and it's going to strengthen. So there'll be wind with the rain and snow, and then it's like all snow back into Minnesota, North Dakota, where the cold air is mixing in. Showers and storms along the East Coast, which turns into regular rain up in Northeast. And then our big storm for the Pacific Northwest with heavy snow, rain and snow, depending on elevation and location. Otherwise, and a lot of wind here too. And we're also going to have a lot of wind in the plains. So it's going to be crazy. Those wind advisories are already up, and they're probably going to expand. And so the cold air spilling in with those north and northwest winds, it's going to be felt. So, for example, tomorrow's highs in the low to mid 40s here in Iowa. You add in the wind chill, it's going to be in the 20s. So, again, North Dakota highs in the 20s to near 30. Wind chill puts it in the single digits. So, it's going to be cold in the plains and in the upper Midwest, moving into the Great Lakes with that wind thrown in. 48-hour precipitation, there's your heavy rain in the southeast, maybe up to 2.5 inches for some. Florida Panhandle, I'm looking at you. And then it's even heavier rain and snow for Northern California. That's kind of our bullseye for the heaviest, and we're talking up to 4 inches of rain or liquid equivalent snow. It's going to be a lot of snow along the Oregon coast, close to 2 inches. Same for Washington, maybe even a little more for the Olympic Mountains. And that snow in the Olympic Mountains, and we're talking 2-3 feet for the Siskiyous of California, 2-3-4 feet of snow. And a lot of snow for the Oregon and Washington Cascades, especially Washington. And there's your snow up the northern plains. North Dakota could see up to a foot in some areas. Lighter amounts for most, though. This is showing a little bit of lake effect snow off of Superior, off of Michigan. So, not a lot, but, 6 inches or so, for places like Cadillac, Michigan. Surface for Thursday. Here's our low strengthening in the Great Lakes, and with lots of rain and snow, with heavy snow for West Virginia into Virginia, the mountains there. And then for the Pacific Northwest, our big storm continues. Flooding concerns for Northern California into southwestern Oregon along the coast. And heavy snow still in Oregon, getting into Idaho, snow into Montana as well. And there's our cold front racing through the plains. Anomalous temperatures on Thursday, turning below average for the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley into Kentucky, and then below average for North Dakota and into much of the central and northern plains, but not a lot below average, but a little bit. And slightly above average for the Great Basin into the southwest. Highs on Thursday, it's more like it for Iowa, 30s and 40s, low 40s mostly, but some 30s. I think it'll be in the 30s here. And again, those wind chills. It won't be as windy as Thursday, but it'll be colder air temperature. So the wind chill is about the same. Wind chills here in Iowa will be in the 20s. Highs on Friday as we go through the rest of the week and get you to the weekend, because remember, your forecast through the weekend or your time back. So we're looking at highs on Friday, 40s for the mid-Atlantic, and 30s all the way down, 50s all the way down to the Gulf Coast. So turning colder across the country on Friday, a little bit warmer into the South Plains and along the east slopes of the Rockies, and cooler in the Northwest. Saturday, again, the warmth spreads out of the South Plains into the Central Plains, and the Southeast remains kind of warm, but cooling off Northern Plains especially, and parts of the Northwest. And then Sunday, you see some more of that cold expand into Montana, into North Dakota, but warming up into the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley, that sort of thing. Let's go back to our GFS model and let's take a look at that because we haven't done that yet. And there's some interesting things on here. So let's start with right now. Here's our low, Minnesota. You can see the gradient here, real tight isobars, wind picking up, especially as we get into the day. We get a little bit of heating, causes the air to rise. That gets replaced by sinking air that tends to pull those stronger winds above our heads down to the surface. So the winds will increase as we go through the day. Snow on the backside here, rain ahead of it. Here's your heavy rain down in the southeast. And our big storm for the Pacific Northwest is approaching. Our low in Minnesota goes up into Canada, snow on the backside. Look at these isobars for the Northwest. Just very, very windy and heavy rain coming in. Speaking of heavy rain, and I think we were, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, into Florida, and Georgia. This gets us to tonight. And then as we get into midnight tonight, we see windy conditions snowing up here in the Northwest, in the northern plains. We have heavy rain and snow for the Pacific Northwest and wind. We have heavy rain lingering into Florida and moving southward there. As we get into the day tomorrow, this is tomorrow morning. So snow lingering in the northern plains, upper Midwest. Very windy, very rainy, very snowy for the Pacific Northwest. And this is noon tomorrow. Then we get through the day. We see cold air and a few flurries in the northern plains, upper Midwest. Very cold temperatures with that wind. The low strengthening over the Great Lakes. We see some of that lake effect snow off of Superior, Michigan that we talked about. Some rain with our cold front moving into the northeast and just getting wall up to there in Northern California. And then as we go into, this is Thursday now, Thursday morning, very heavy snow coming off of Superior and very heavy rain in Northern California and windy still in the plains with that cold air. But the cold air is being shunted mostly off into the Great Lakes and then eventually the Northeast. So not making real southern progress for you in the South Plains. Sorry about that. But the cold wind remains for Iowa, Minnesota, even into Illinois. And the Great Lakes. And then our low kind of meanders around. We got a double-barreled low around a bigger low circulation. So they kind of do a little dance, a little do-si-do. So this low sinks southward and a little bit of light snow for Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee. This gets us into Friday morning. Still crazy in the Pacific Northwest with a very strong low. And then our other low, so these are dancing around each other with snow in Pennsylvania and New York. And so that low kind of fades out and gets replaced by this one as the entire circulation moves eastward. So more snow from West Virginia into Pennsylvania and New York State. Very powerful low moving into British Columbia and still with some rain and snow with that. And then if we get into the day, this is Saturday morning. And we see snow moving into the Great Basin a little bit, and certainly the Northern Rockies and Northern California. Our big low in New England is exiting with lots of rain and wind. And I think we'll get a little bit of lake effect snow off of the eastern Great Lakes as the low pulls out and the cold air spills in. Snow for the northern plains. This is the 24th. This is actually Saturday night at midnight. Heavy rain still for California and really exploding here with heavy rain and snow for California. This low is going to sink through the state, so it's going to bring you some rain even down LA, maybe even San Diego, and we see more snow busting out in the Great Basin, also parts of the Northwest and into Wyoming. And another low here into the Great Lakes with some more snow, mainly UP of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. This low gets its act together a little bit in Wyoming and starts to move into South Dakota and back into Colorado. We'll watch this because originally this was the storm that was going to bring us some snow here in Iowa before Thanksgiving. Maybe a little bit on the 25th, but back towards South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming and Montana, a better bet. A few showers here. Rain getting down to San Diego and California. We'll watch this system and into the Midwest. So a little bit of light snow here in western Iowa. Then Monday night as we get into Tuesday. So this is going to be midnight Monday night. So the light snow in Iowa moving into the eastern part of the state, into Wisconsin and Michigan. So not a lot of snow for me here in western Iowa, but a little bit. So you're saying there's a chance. And then we'll take a look at this southern system now. For New Mexico, Colorado, moving out into Kansas, dropping into the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas, into West Texas, a chance of snow, across Oklahoma City, into Missouri and Illinois. This gets us to Wednesday, the 27th. So this is actually Tuesday night on the 26th at midnight, and then getting us into the busiest travel day of the year. Snow for Lubbock, moving down towards Midland, Odessa, for Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Fayetteville, Arkansas, up into Missouri, southern Illinois. So how about that, travelers? Watch out for some snow kind of south. It happens, not very often, but it happens. So Thanksgiving snow maybe for Lubbock, my friends in Lubbock, Texas, and then moving up into Arkansas. This is still Wednesday. This is noon on Wednesday. So rain, you can drive through that. It's a pain for some, but especially the heavy parts. But some snow back here in Arkansas. Watch out for that, and light snow in Colorado into Wyoming. You kind of expect that this time of year. And then as we get later into Wednesday, the busiest travel day of the year, some snow busting out in New York and New England. But mostly it's heavy rain around that front, just a little bit of snow on the backside. This is Thanksgiving. This is midnight before Thanksgiving, and that cold air behind the system is sinking in. And I'm going to show you those temperatures. It's kind of dramatic. The highs on Thanksgiving are not very high across the country. And then snow for the Northeast on Thanksgiving Day. So I know the Northeast has been complaining about just lack of winters in the last previous years, and I get that. And so maybe a little bit of Thanksgiving snow, which has been rare as of late, which didn't used to be so rare. All right, that gets us through Thanksgiving. So let's go back to our 8 to 14 day temps, and then I'll show you those Thanksgiving highs, which aren't very. So this is November 26th through December 2nd, and you can see much below, or a big chance of below average temperatures up there in the northern plains, but like the western 2/3 almost. And then the southeast is the best chance of above average temperatures, but all the way up the east coast into the Great Lakes. Precipitation wise, above average for the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, down into Tennessee, Kentucky, even in the southeast, and also above average chances getting into I would call it the Great Basin into the northern plains. All right, highs on Thanksgiving. Are you kidding me? This is not wind chills. These are highs on Thanksgiving. 20s in Iowa, teens in the Dakotas into Minnesota, 20s and 30s Nebraska, 30s Kansas and Oklahoma, 30s West Texas, like barely above freezing for Lubbock at 35 for a high. And even 40s all the way through the Great Lakes into the Northeast, but turning cooler, especially Thanksgiving night. Low 40s, low to mid 40s, Willamette Valley. Of course, warm in the Southeast. We're waiting for the cold front, so 60s. Kind of pleasant for parts of the Southeast into the Mid-Atlantic will be the warm spot. But take a look at that map for Thanksgiving. It's going to be cold. And where will the snow be on the ground? Well, maybe a little bit here in Iowa, like up to an inch perhaps where I live, but about the same for Lubbock, Texas, up to about an inch. And then as you get into the panhandle of Texas, I mean, could be 4 or 5 inches for Amarillo, certainly up into southwestern Kansas. So that's kind of new information. Also, parts of Missouri and Arkansas could see snow on the ground Thanksgiving morning. And in the Northeast, finally, a snowy Thanksgiving, maybe not quite towards the big cities, but certainly as you get into upstate New York, Pennsylvania, even into Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and then, of course, in the Rockies and the mountains of Oregon, Washington, and California. Of course. Smiley face for Idaho. So sorry, Boise, you're missing out. But the hills around you have snow for Thanksgiving. All right, that's your forecast through the weekend, through Thanksgiving. A lot of excitement still. And we'll keep bringing it to you. It's kind of fun. So thank you for tuning in. The Weather Mike. Have an amazing day.